My name is Michael Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and until last year, I worked as a geologist for a private mining company out in Colorado. If you'd asked me a few years ago whether I'd ever return to my hometown of Milford, Pennsylvania, I would have said never. But life has a strange way of bringing you back to the places you least want to see again. I came back in the fall of 2022. My father had just passed away, and I needed time away from everything. Away from city noise, deadlines, people. I thought maybe I could find some kind of peace back in Milford. Instead, I found Hollow Ridge. When I was a kid, Hollow Ridge Mine was already shut down. It sat on the edge of town like a scar, fenced off with rusted wire and old warning signs that everyone ignored. The older kids used to dare each other to sneak in at night. Rumor was the mine went down almost a mile beneath the ground, and after the cave-in in 1987, 12 men never made it out. Some said they were buried alive. Others said their bodies were never found. My father worked at that mine once, long before I was born. He never talked about it, but sometimes I'd catch him staring off at nothing, eyes glassy, when someone mentioned Hollow Ridge. If I asked him what happened down there, he'd just shake his head and say, "Some things don't stay buried, son. Not even underground." I never understood what he meant. Not until recently. When I got back to town, it was almost unrecognizable. The storefronts were boarded up. The gas station near Main Street had been abandoned for years. Even the bar, Murphy's Tavern, where my father used to go every Friday, looked half dead. But it was still open, and the old locals still gathered there, the kind of people who've seen too much and talked too little. I walked in that night, looking for familiar faces. The air smelled like old wood, cigarettes, and stale beer. The jukebox in the corner played something low and tired. When I sat down, an old man at the counter turned his head just enough to recognize me. "Michael Bennett," he said, voice rough like gravel. It took me a second to place him. It was Frank Heller, one of my dad's old friends, and one of the last surviving miners from Hollow Ridge. "Didn't think I'd ever see you again," he muttered. We talked for a while. I told him why I was back, that I wanted to shoot a small documentary about the history of the town. Frank didn't say much at first. Then, when I mentioned Hollow Ridge, his eyes changed. The look he gave me was part warning, part pity. "You don't want to go poking around there, son. That place ain't empty." I laughed it off, tried to play it cool, but his tone made something twist in my stomach. When I asked him what he meant, he said, "The earth down there still breathes, and sometimes it talks back." Before I could ask more, he got up, tossed a few bills on the counter, and left. The bartender just gave me a look like, "Don't ask." 2 days later, I drove out to the edge of town with my camera. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky orange and red. The old access road was cracked and overgrown, lined with skeletal trees that reached out like arms. The further I went, the quieter it got. No wind, no birds, just the hum of my engine and the crunch of gravel. The entrance to Hollow Ridge was still there, a gaping mouth of darkness framed by rusted supports and torn caution tape. The "No Trespassing" sign hung crooked, half buried in the dirt. Someone had spray painted over it. "They never left." I felt a chill crawl up my back. It was probably just some local kid trying to be edgy, but still, something about it felt wrong. I parked, grabbed my flashlight and camera, and stepped out. The ground near the entrance was damp and cold, even though the air above was mild. It smelled like iron and rot, the kind of smell that clings to your skin. I filmed for a while, walking the perimeter. The fencing was bent in several spots, like something had pushed through from the inside. The old mine carts were still sitting on rusted rails, half buried in weeds. Everything felt frozen in time, like the workers had just vanished mid-shift. As the light faded, I heard something, Faint, but real. A low metallic groan deep in the tunnel. I froze, listening. It wasn't wind. It wasn't an echo. It sounded like breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. Then silence. I told myself it was just air pressure shifting underground. Old mines make noise all the time. But I didn't stay long after that. That night I reviewed the footage in my motel room. Most of it was just static and darkness, until the end. Right before I turned to leave, the microphone picked up something I hadn't noticed in person. A voice. It was faint, but unmistakable. A man's whisper just behind me. "You came back." I replayed it over and over, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the wind or a glitch in the audio. But every time I listened, I heard the same thing. And the worst part? It sounded like my father's voice. That night I couldn't sleep. The motel walls creaked with every gust of wind, and the old radiator hissed like a snake. At around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside my door. Slow, deliberate. They stopped, right at the threshold. No knock, no voice, just silence. When I looked through the peephole, there was no one there. But I swear, for a split second, I saw a faint light down the hall, the kind you see from a miner's helmet lamp. By morning, I had made my mind up. Whatever was left down there, truth, myth, or something in between, I had to find out. From my father, from myself. So I called my old college friend David Clark, a cameraman who'd worked with me on a few geology documentaries. He agreed to come down for a weekend. We planned to go into Hollow Ridge together, fully equipped, during daylight. I told him it was just for research, but deep down, I think I already knew this was something else. Something darker. Something that didn't want to be found. The tunnel stretched deeper than I expected. When I first stepped down the rusted metal stairs, I thought I'd find a few damp rooms, maybe some abandoned equipment left behind when the mine closed. But the air was different down here. Heavier, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Each breath felt thick, clinging to the back of my throat with the taste of metal and rot. My flashlight beam sliced through the darkness, trembling slightly as I moved. The walls were slick with condensation, and somewhere far ahead, water dripped in slow, steady intervals. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoed endlessly, folding into the blackness ahead of me. I had come alone. Stupid, I know. But after the footage I captured in the abandoned house went viral, I needed something bigger. Something that would make people feel fear again. And this mine, this forgotten descent into the earth, was perfect. Locals refused to talk about it, except for one old man who told me, in a low, shaking voice, "Don't follow the voices. They're not real." I laughed then. Now I wasn't so sure. About 30 meters in, I found the first tunnel split. The main passage continued straight, but to the right, a narrow shaft led down into the dark, steep enough that the flashlight beam could barely touch the bottom. A faint draft of cold air brushed my face, colder than anything above ground could be. It felt wrong, too cold. I marked the wall with a piece of chalk, then continued straight. My camera recorded everything, the crunch of gravel beneath my boots, the steady hum of my breathing, and that endless dripping sound. After a while, I realized the dripping had stopped. The silence hit me like a wall. No air movement, no echoes, nothing. Just a suffocating stillness that made my heart hammer in my chest. Then came the whisper. Not loud, not even clear, but unmistakably human. It came from behind me. "Hello?" I called out, my voice cracking in the silence. "Is someone there?" No answer. Only that same faint, breathy sound, just out of reach. It didn't echo. It moved. It was as if the darkness itself exhaled the word. I turned back toward the entrance, but the tunnel seemed longer now. My flashlight flickered, once, twice. When it came back, there was something carved into the wall, something that hadn't been there before. A symbol, roughly scratched, uneven, a circle with 3 jagged lines cutting through it. I lifted my hand to trace it, and the stone was warm. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, wet, bare, coming closer. I froze, every muscle locked. My breathing quickened, the camera shaking in my grip. I turned the flashlight toward the sound, but there was nothing. Just the tunnel stretching into forever. But the steps continued, closer now, slapping against the wet floor. I did the only thing I could. I ran. The beam bounced wildly, catching glimpses of the walls as I sprinted. The same symbol, scratched again and again, repeating every few meters like a warning. The air grew thicker, my lungs burning. Behind me, the footsteps grew faster, but they didn't sound like just one person anymore. It was many. When I reached the shaft that went downward, I didn't think. I climbed. Down deeper into the mine, scraping my hands raw against the stone. Below, the air grew colder still, and the walls began to change. The stone wasn't natural anymore. It looked carved, shaped into crude archways and symbols, the same 3 jagged lines repeating like a language I wasn't meant to read. At the bottom, I found a room. It wasn't large. Just a hollow space with a low ceiling, filled with debris and what looked like bones. Animal bones, maybe. Or not. I tried not to look too closely. In the center stood a rusted metal chair. Straps hung from its arms. Around it, melted candles lay in dried pools of wax. And on the wall behind it, written in dark, flaking red, were the words, "We never left." My camera flickered again. The battery shouldn't have been low, but the display showed red. I reached to shut it off, and that's when I saw the movement. A shape, standing in the corner of the room. Small, thin, still. It looked like a child. My heart hitched. I raised the flashlight slowly. The beam touched its face. It wasn't a child. Its skin hung in loose folds, as if gravity had been pulling it down for years. Its eyes were pits of darkness, too deep to reflect the light. When it moved, the sound wasn't human. It was a scraping, dragging noise like wet cloth over stone. It tilted its head, and I swear I heard it whisper, "We told you not to follow the voices." Then the light went out. I don't remember climbing back. I don't remember how I found the surface. The footage from that night was mostly static, but for 3 seconds, just 3, there was something visible. A face, pale and stretched, leaning close to the lens, eyes wide open like screaming, but no sound came out. I deleted the video. I tried to forget. But every night since then, when the world is quiet and my house goes still, I hear it. That slow, wet dragging, somewhere beneath the floor. And sometimes, when I wake in the dark, I swear I see the faint outline of that same symbol, scratched into the wall above my bed. I hadn't gone back to the mine, at least not physically, but in my head, I never really left. It's been 4 months since that night. 4 months of sleeplessness, of whispers behind walls, of shadows that move where there shouldn't be any light. I stopped uploading videos, stopped talking to anyone. The world above feels distant, thin, like paper stretched over something rotten underneath. I tried to convince myself it was trauma, hallucinations, the price of fear. But trauma doesn't leave marks. Last week, I found that same symbol, the circle with 3 jagged lines, carved into the wood under my desk. The thing is, I hadn't touched a knife. The nights are the worst. It always begins the same way. The sound. That wet dragging, moving beneath the floorboards, circling under my bed, stopping just long enough for me to think it's gone before it starts again. I moved apartments 2 weeks ago. New walls, new floors, no memories of that night. But the sound followed. 2 nights ago, I woke to my phone recording. I don't remember starting it. The screen showed a 10-minute clip of my empty room, except it wasn't empty. At the edge of the frame near the door, there was a reflection in the glass. A shape. Still. Watching. The face was blurry, stretched like something pressed too close to the camera lens, but I knew it. The hollow eyes, the torn mouth, the thing from the mine. And in the last second of the recording, the camera tilted on its own, as if something breathed against it. Then, darkness. I started digging again, trying to find out what the symbols meant. The old mining records were gone, erased, like the place never existed. But in an archived newspaper from 1963, I found something. Miners missing after unofficial excavation. Site closed. The article said 13 men went missing one night after hearing strange voices deeper in the tunnels. Only one body was recovered. Skin bleached, eyes blackened, mouth torn open as if screaming. The police closed the mine. The town forgot. But someone, years later, had written a note in pencil on the margin of that article. They didn't die. They stayed. That's when I realized what the words on the wall meant. We never left. The dreams came after that. I'd see myself walking through the tunnels again, flashlight flickering, every step echoing like footsteps behind me. The deeper I went, the louder the whispers grew until I couldn't tell if they were calling for help or warning me to stop. Every time I'd wake up with dirt under my nails and the smell of metal on my hands. And last night, I woke up standing in front of my door. In my hand was a small rock, the same dark stone from the mine. I don't remember how I got it. I think the mine wants me back. It's hard to explain, but sometimes I hear it, a low hum, beneath everything. When the world goes silent, when the refrigerator stops buzzing or the cars fade away, I can hear it. A pulse, faint and distant, like something alive beneath the earth. I keep telling myself it's just tinnitus, that I'm imagining it. But then I look down and I see the dust on my floor moving, breathing. Tonight, I set up my camera again. One last time. I want proof. If it follows me, I'll catch it on film. I need to know I'm not insane. It's 3:47 a.m. The house is silent except for the ticking of the clock. I've turned off every light except the one in the hallway. The camera is pointed toward the bedroom door. The floorboards creak. Once. Twice. Then that sound. That same dragging noise, slow and wet, crawling closer. My heart slams in my chest as I grip the flashlight. I whisper into the camera, "If you're watching this and I don't make it out, don't go back there. Don't go into the mine." The sound stops right outside my door. The doorknob moves, just slightly, like a slow breath pushing against the air. The flashlight flickers. Then, the door opens. For a moment, there's nothing but darkness, the kind that feels like it's swallowing light itself. Then a shape steps into the doorway, tall, uneven, its head bent at an unnatural angle. I can't see its face, but I feel it watching me. Behind it, deeper in the shadows, there are others. I can hear them whispering, faint, broken voices speaking in unison. Come back down. You're one of us now. I raise the camera. My hands are shaking so badly the frame blurs. What do you want from me? I shout. The whispers stop, and a single voice answers. You took our place. The figure moves. It doesn't walk. It folds, collapsing inward like smoke sucked into the air, vanishing into the darkness. But the floor beneath me shifts. Cracks appear in the wood, splitting open like wounds. Cold air rushes up from below, and I hear it again. The hum. The mine. It's under me. It's always been under me. I drop the camera. The recording ends in chaos. Flashing lights, heavy breathing, the crash of furniture. The last image before the feed cuts to static is my face, eyes wide, mouth open in silent terror as something drags me backwards into the dark. That's where the video ends. At least, that's what the police report says. Because when they found the camera, there was no one in the apartment. No body. No blood. Nothing, except for one thing scratched into the wall above the bed. The symbol. And below it, in faint red letters, we returned. The footage wasn't supposed to exist. That's what I told myself when I found the old SD card inside a rusted camera bag at a yard sale on the edge of Mill Creek. The guy selling it didn't know where it came from. He said it was found in some empty apartment after the last tenant vanished. He laughed when he said it, like it was just a creepy story to help him sell old junk. I bought it for $20. That was 2 months ago. I should have destroyed it the moment I saw what was on it. At first, the files looked corrupted, static, flickering, no audio. But when I ran data recovery software, new folders appeared, all dated October 2019. The first video was titled simply basemententry.move. The screen showed a man, pale, eyes sunken, holding the camera close. His name appeared in one of the recovered text files, Mark Holloway. He was shaking, whispering something I couldn't make out, then turning the camera toward a door. I realized it wasn't a basement anymore. It looked like an apartment, but the wooden floor had cracks, black veins crawling through them like roots. As he opened the door, the camera flickered. A low hum filled the audio, deep and constant, like something mechanical or alive. Then the feed cut to black. The second video was shorter, just 2 seconds. A single frame of a face, stretched wide, eyes dark and endless. After that, my computer crashed. For the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Who was this man? What happened to him? So I started digging. A local archive had an old police report from 2019. Missing person, male, mid-30s, last known address on Willow Road. No leads. Case closed. But one note stood out, written in pen across the top of the file. Possible link to Mill Creek Mine Closure, 1963. The same year the miners disappeared. I decided to visit the site. The mine was fenced off, a crumbling metal barrier with a faded "No Trespassing" sign, half covered in moss. The entrance was sealed with concrete, but the air round it felt wrong, heavy, charged, like the moment before a thunderstorm. I took a few pictures, recorded some audio, and left. But when I got home and played back the recording, there was something there. Behind the wind and static, a voice. It whispered my name. After that night, I started noticing small things. My reflection would lag behind in the mirror. The lights in my hallway would flicker, one after another, like footsteps moving closer. Once, I woke up to find dirt on my pillow, black, grainy, the same kind I'd seen at the mine. Then 2 days ago, the camera bag I'd left in my closet was open. Inside, the SD card was missing. But when I turned on my laptop, a new folder appeared on the desktop. We are still here. I hesitated before opening it. Every instinct told me not to, but curiosity, or something deeper, pushed me forward. Inside were 12 new videos, all dated today's date. Except, I hadn't recorded anything. I clicked the first file. It showed me, sitting at my desk, staring at the screen, except I wasn't holding a camera. The perspective was from somewhere behind me. My breath caught. I turned around. Nothing. When I looked back, the video had changed. The figure behind me was closer, until its face filled the screen. Those eyes, hollow, black. Mark Holloway. The audio distorted, whispering beneath the static. You opened it. Now it's open again. I don't remember closing the laptop. I don't even remember moving. But when I woke up, it was morning, or what passed for it. The world outside was gray, drained of all color. The clock on the wall was frozen at 3:47 a.m. My phone wouldn't turn on. The power was out. And on my desk, where the laptop had been, there was only the camera. Old, cracked, still recording. On the tiny screen, I saw something impossible. The view of the mine's interior. Long corridors lined with dripping stone, faint figures shifting in the dark. And in the middle of it all, a circle, drawn in blood, 3 jagged lines through it. The same mark from the footage. The same one found under Mark's desk. It was fresh. Now I'm hearing it too. The hum. The whispers beneath the floor. I tried leaving, but every time I reach the door, I end up back at this desk. The clock never moves. The air never changes. It's like I'm trapped in a loop that keeps folding in on itself. And just now, as I'm typing this, I see words forming on the wall in faint red strokes. They weren't there a second ago. We never left. Now neither will you. The screen flickers. The lights darken, and in the corner of my eye, I see movement, a hand pressing against the glass of the monitor, fingers stretching from inside the screen. The hum grows louder. The lights go out. The last thing I see before everything goes black is my reflection standing behind me, smiling. The Mill Creek Archive isn't open to the public anymore. At least, that's what the sign says. When I first started my internship there, I didn't expect to find anything unusual. Just old reports, taped interviews, local history. The kind of small-town mysteries that people forget after a few years. But I've always had a weakness for the things people aren't supposed to see. It began with a mislabeled box. No barcode, no record in the system, just a rusted tin container shoved deep into a forgotten shelf of abandoned cases. On the side, in faded black marker, were 2 words: Willow Road. Inside, I found folders wrapped in brown paper and sealed with old tape. Some had photos inside, burned edges, blurred figures, houses swallowed by fog. Others contained police reports, handwritten notes, and even cassette tapes labeled with red ink. The first file I opened was dated 2011. The name at the top of the page was Mark Holloway. I'd read about him before, a man who'd bought a house with his wife, vanished months later. But this file was different. It wasn't just a missing person case. It was full of contradictions, incomplete statements, and photographs. One picture showed the house on Willow Road. Another, a dark stain on the floor shaped like a hand. And the last one, a blurry image of the basement door. At the bottom of the folder, there was a sticky note. It said, "Do not dig further. They listen." I thought it was a joke, until I found the second box. This one was labeled Mill Creek Mine, closed 1963. But when I opened it, the documents inside weren't from the 60s. They were recent, 2019, 2020, even 2022. One video transcript caught my attention. It was from a recovered camera found in an abandoned apartment. The last entry was titled Part 4, The Forgotten Footage. The report described how the footage contained imagery inconsistent with known physical environments. In other words, impossible. Another page mentioned a humming noise recorded at 18 hertz, a frequency known to cause hallucinations, fear, and nausea. But one technician's note at the bottom made my blood run cold. Exposure to the audio sample induces visual distortions in the reflection. Do not replay. Next to that note was a short line underlined 3 times. Subject heard whispers matching the phrase, "We never left." I didn't sleep that night. When I came back the next morning, my workstation had been reassigned. The boxes were gone. When I asked the archivist, a quiet man named Lawson, he told me those materials were under restricted access. When I pressed him, he just said, "You're not cleared for that kind of truth." That phrase stuck with me. That kind of truth. I wasn't sure if he was warning me or testing me. 3 days later, a new package appeared on my desk. No return address. Inside, a small flash drive wrapped in a strip of aged newspaper. Written across it, "You were right to keep looking." There were only 2 files on it. The first was a text document. It contained a list of names, dozens of them, each followed by a date and a location across Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. The last entry was blank, except for a timestamp, 03:47 a.m., the same time mentioned in Holloway's police report. The second file was a video. When I played it, it started with static, faint, shifting, like snow on an old TV. Then a voice. Male. Tired. Whispering. "They found me again. Don't look at the walls." The image stabilized. A man sitting in a small storage room, camera shaking in his hands. Behind him, I could make out shelves lined with cardboard boxes, all labeled Mill Creek Archive. Then movement. Something passed behind him. A blur, like a shadow shaped almost human. He froze, looked directly into the camera. "If you see this, stop watching." The feed glitched. A burst of static, then a frame of text flashed across the screen for less than a second. When I slowed it down, I could read it. "They are not ghosts. They remember." That was 2 weeks ago. Since then, I've been noticing things. Every night when I close the archive, the lights near the back shelves flicker. Always the same row where the Willow Road files used to be. Sometimes I hear faint scratches coming from the ventilation ducts, like nails dragging against metal. Lawson doesn't come to work anymore. His desk is empty. But every morning, there's a new file on my terminal, auto-generated, time-stamped at 3:47 a.m. Each one labeled with a single phrase, Part 6. pending. I've tried deleting them. They come back. And last night, when I stayed late to check the surveillance footage, I saw something that made me leave the building without locking the door. In the recording, at exactly 3:47, the lights cut out. When they came back on, there was someone standing in the center aisle. A man in a torn flannel shirt, face pale, eyes black, holding a camera, staring straight at the lens. I'm writing this now because I don't know what else to do. The hum has started again. It's faint, but I can hear it through the walls. Low, steady, alive. There's something wrong with this building. It's like it's remembering too much. I keep thinking about that phrase from the video. They are not ghosts. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's something older. Something that feeds on memory, on people trying to document what shouldn't be remembered. I think the archives themselves are the trap. The more we record, the more it grows. The power just went out. The emergency lights came on, red and dim. Somewhere down the hall, I can hear the hum rising, vibrating through the floor. I see shadows moving between the shelves, long, distorted, like they're watching me from behind the boxes. One of the file drawers just slid open on its own. Inside, a single new folder. It has my name on it. The paper inside is blank, except for one sentence. Welcome to Part 6.